Welcome everybody to episode 14 of Ripple Live. I'm Steve and I'm here with my buddy Mark Spencer. And yep, here we are. And we're in that little lull period called the summer. Everyone's out, barbecuing and going to the beach and to the park and stuff like that. So, we're here doing a live stream, and we're here to talk about all things Final Cut Pro 10, answer your questions, and generally have a good time. So, Mark.
Yes, good to see you, Steve. I felt like I just saw you yesterday in a whole nother city.
Yeah, I think I did. Yeah, see you in Los Angeles.
We were together doing some fun work that you guys will hear about a little further down the road. Yeah. But this show's about Final Cut Pro 10 and related applications. It's about answering your questions about Final Cut Pro 10 and related applications. And for you to ask questions, there's a chat window right here in YouTube. You'll see there where you can ask your questions. If you want to make sure your question gets answered, you can click there's a little dollar sign. You can make a nominal donation. It's called a super chat. And that way your question will be pinned to the top and it will be a bright color and we can't miss it. Or if you just want to donate to support the show, we always appreciate that. Or just ask a question. We'll answer as many as we possibly can. We usually get things started with a tip or two just to get things rolling, but feel free to post questions at any time and we'll jump into those. And right. Steve, back to you.
All right, so we have a pretty exciting announcement. Mark and I have been working on this plugin for several weeks. When Final Cut Pro 10 came out back in 2011, within a year or so afterwards, Mark and I began working on a plugin to do what are called callouts. They're graphics that you do pointers and magnifiers and lines that really kind of draw the viewer's attention to a specific area on the screen. We had one out before anybody else did, and they were very, very popular. And we did like 3 versions of it, but we wanted to take it to the next level. And of course, there are other callout plugins out there, but we really wanted to see what can we do to make them really, really great? So today, we're announcing Callouts Complete. And Callouts Complete now includes, ta-da, tracking. So you'll now be able to track the callouts. That's the big one. So what I wanted to do is going to show you our short little teaser trailer. And then Mark is here online. He's got his callouts plugin loaded up. And he's going to kind of walk you through some of the highlights of it. And you can ask whatever question you want. And let me go ahead and show you that, and we'll go ahead and get started. Let's see here. Command Control F. Oh, here we go. Here we go.
Ripple Callouts Complete. The original. All new designs, completely trackable, exclusively for Final Cut Pro 10.
So there's our trailer for the callouts, and hopefully you got a really good sense of what they do. We created a all new flat look for them, so they've got a modern look, and we added a whole new category of hand-drawn callouts, which we think are going to be great for YouTubers and people that want to, have kind of some fun callouts. So that said, I'm going to pass the baton, as it were, the digital baton over to Mark, and he's going to walk you through some of the, things that make callouts unique, that make ours different than some of the other callouts out there. So go ahead, Mark.
Great, thanks, Steve. So let me just share my screen here and go to Final Cut Pro. So here in your titles browser, when you install them, so they're available through the FX Factory platform. So if you haven't used FX Factory before, it's basically an app store for plugins for Final Cut Pro and other NLEs as well. And once you install, it'll show up in your titles browser. And what we've done is I would say the theme of Callouts Complete is not only tracking, but variety and customization. So we give you a lot of different types of callouts. We have these simple callouts. We've divided them into categories, different kind of lines, different kind of paint strokes, magnifiers, labels, talk bubbles, pointers, and as Steve mentioned, these hand-drawn arrows. So I thought I'd just demo a couple of these really quickly so you can get a sense of how they work and how the tracking works. The tracking is really kind of exciting. So with this clip, I'll just hit X to mark the clip, and I'm going to select one of these hand-drawn arrows and press Q to attach it. And here's all you do to track. I mean, it's really great. You get this rectangle, and you choose what to track. And in this case, we've got the skateboarder, so I'm going to go down to his foot there and track his foot. So you set that tracking area, and then there's this object tracker down here and track forward, and you can track forward or backward depending on the nature of the footage. Sometimes it's best to track backwards because there's something very obvious at the end of the frame. And there's also some tracking settings here. You can do full or half resolution if the tracking is, if you're on an older computer and it takes too long, and you can do some smoothing after the fact. So I'm just going to track forward, and this is a little bit older iMac I'm doing this on. You can see it's quite fast. It's done that track. And now if I scrub through this, we can see right away that callout tracks. So let me move forward a little bit, and I can customize this. So I'm going to turn that arrow around, and maybe I'll scale it down a little bit. And I want to point down at his foot and maybe change the color a little bit so everything's really customizable. This text, it's a little big, and I don't really like the font. So I'm going to change the font to something like Good Dog, and I'll say Perfect Ollie. And escape. And I can position the text completely separate from the call out. And then if I play that through, we've got a great tracking call out. Now, one thing that's kind of cool, besides all the customization, there's 12 different hand-drawn arrows here. And if you wanted to change your mind, you don't need to add a new one and track it and start all over again. If we go back to the title inspector, there's a pop-up menu for arrow type. So it's like, oh, actually, I'd like to use that this one called lightning filled instead. So I'll just select that one from here. So I already got the customized color used. Maybe I could change the size a little bit if I wanted to, and can position it where I want the text. And it's still got all the tracking in place. So a lot of these callouts, once you're in a category, you can switch the callout without needing to apply a new one and track all over again. Another cool example is, let me just press X to mark this clip. If I scroll up, we have these different kind of labels, and I really like this one. It's called Comment Tag B. So I'm going to connect it here, and once again, I'll track. So I'll just take this little square, this little rectangle, and put it on that finger and track that guy. And you can see it does its thing. First it tracks it, and then it sets keyframes. And by the way, if you ever need to adjust a track afterwards, if it slips or something, it's easy to do right in the inspector here. So now that tracks. And we've got this call out here. So I can resize the little pointer in the corner. I could put it in a different position. I can take the text and put it in a different place. I can change where the pointer points. And in the title inspector, we can scale this whole thing down a little large to begin with, something like that. A little bit smaller. And once you're done with the tracker, you can move that over. And then maybe this is something like safety tip. And of course, you can change the font and everything any way you want. What did I do? I don't know what I did. I hit something when I was typing there through the entire cut. Okay, great. And then, of course, you can change all the colors of everything very easily here. And what's kind of neat is you can replace this number 1 with just about anything. In fact, if you hit Control-Command-Space, you can bring up emojis. So I can put in a little, construction person here to, I'm going to hold the space bar, the command key down also so it doesn't snap. And maybe change the font size a little bit there. That looks good right there. And then very quickly, I can have a nice little call out there, which is just completely customizable to make it look, really any way that you want. And then finally, the last thing I just want to show you here is a really cool thing that you can do in order to show something that's not even on the screen. So for this shot, one thing you might want to do is add a magnifier because you want to point out how to do some maintenance on this car. So we've got these magnifiers here. If I attach one, you can see, I'll move the tracker out of the way here. I won't track this right now. So I can magnify something in here, and I can choose how big the magnifier is, how much to magnify, and I can change the position of the content within that frame. It's really flexible. I can change it to be, magnifying glass or crosshairs if it's some different kind of subject there. So really flexible. And then you could combine that with a pointer call out to point an arrow in there and say something. But what if you wanted to show something that, was too small to actually zoom in there or isn't even there? So check this out. I'm going to go up to these lines here, and any of the ones that have basically a container, these circles and these squares, I'm just going to choose this one right here and press Q. And let's track it first. So I'll track it to this grid, this grill here. I'll track forward. And it tracks it, gets that done, then adds keyframes. And boom, that tracks just perfectly. So with that tracked, let's say maybe I want to point out what is inside the engine. We don't actually see an engine here. So check this out. One thing I'm going to do, all of these callouts have second optional text, or many of them do, and you can just turn that on or off down here, show the second text. I don't need it here. But check this thing out. Let me just fill up that box opacity there, maybe make the roundness. Instead of just calling out something that's on the screen, if we scroll down here, there's an option for a drop zone. So I can click on that, and then I can put some content in that. So I'm going to click on the well. Now I need to switch back to the browser. So I'm just going to press Command-1 to switch back to the browser. And there's the engine I want to stick in there. It's a little video, a little animation. And I'll click that and choose Apply Clip. And then Option Command-1 will switch me back to the titles browser. And now I've got this drop zone that shows this other content. And if you double click on a drop zone, you can scale it and reposition it any way you want. But I'm not going to scale it and reposition it now. I'm going to do something a little bit different here, which is kind of cool. What I'm going to do is when that comes on, I'm going to choose the radius of the circle and just add a keyframe and move forward, and then scale that radius up, and it just takes over the frame. So what's going to happen now is we draw the call out on, we see it, and then we go right to that entire video to show something that's not even in the video. So kind of a fun, unique way to use callouts to explain something that can't be explained simply by the content of the video there. So that's just 3 quick examples of ways you can use these callouts. You don't have to use the tracking. Sometimes you don't need it, but the tracking's great, and every single one of them has tracking, and obviously a lot of variety here and very easy to customize. So we're also, it's $59, which is actually cheaper than the original callouts, but it's on sale this week for $39. And if you own a previous version of callouts, any previous version, we were up to callouts 3, you can get it for $29 for an upgrade price. So that's our new thing that we've been working away about, and we really made something that we want to use, and we're already using it extensively for a variety of projects. So it's a lot of fun. So I hope you guys get something out of that.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for that great demo, Mark. There's a question related that Half Inch Sky asked. And by the way, thanks, Craig, for that super chat. We'll get to your question right after this. And we see your question too, Ken. Can we correct the tracking if it gets lost?
Yes, you absolutely can. In fact, let me just, I'm still screen sharing. So let me go back here and I'll show you how you can do that. So let's say we're on this track right here, and all the tracking, every tracking that you have has track points in the inspector here. So this is what got keyframed automatically when it tracked. So what you can do is move to any point that it's off, and you can adjust. Let's see, if I drag on this, you can adjust the track and fix it right there. So you can easily adjust a track at any point. Same thing with this one. You can see the track points and move to any point and retrack it. So yes, you can do that.
Awesome. Thanks for that question, Half Inch Sky. And getting to Craig Shields, because he did do a super chat. Is there an easy way to resize motion project templates or copy paste? I have a 4K file with nice movement that I want to port to a 3240 by 1080 project.
So yeah, Craig. So here's the deal: if the aspect ratio is the same, you're fine. Whether it's 4K or, when I say 4K, I really mean UHD, 3040 by 2160. That'll work in 1920 by 1080 or 1280 by 780. 1280 by 720. It doesn't matter. But you're talking about a different aspect ratio. So what you need to do, Craig, is in Motion, you need to create a different snapshot. So what that means is, I'll open Motion here and show you. If I select the project and go to the inspector in Motion, I've selected the project in the layers list. I've gone to the inspector tab, and now I've selected the project tab in the inspector. You can select snapshots. So this particular one I just opened says project default 16.9, which will work for 720 or 1080. But you can click to add another snapshot of the built-in ones or a custom snapshot. So you, in your case, you would create a custom snapshot at, what did you say, 3240 by 1080. And you would do this, obviously, with your already designed template. I'm just doing on a blank one here. So you would choose that, custom. And once you did that, you would then need to reposition your elements. So there's that really wide project. You would then need to reposition all of your elements for that custom size. It won't mess up your existing design. It will all that repositioning and rescaling will only apply when you use the different snapshot. And the customer will be able to, if they drop it in a project that matches the one you're talking about, it'll switch to that snapshot. So it's a way of creating, you can have the same template in multiple aspect ratios using snapshots, and they'll automatically adjust in Final Cut when they're used in a project that matches that aspect ratio.
Wow. Excellent answer, Mark. So hopefully, Craig, you'll be able to get into Motion and make that change. Thanks for that, Mark. A couple other questions that came through, and I want to back up a little bit. One of the challenges of the chat window is, questions gets posted and we're scrolling way down. So I do my best to scroll back up to make sure that I don't miss anything. So if I do, it's not intentional, just repost it, or as Craig discovered, if you really want that question answered, do a super chat and we'll do it for you. So let's look at a couple of questions in here. Let's see, video workshop volunteers on a 2013 Mac Pro with 6 cores. Will CPU upgrade to 12 cores provide faster encoding and rendering in Final Cut Pro for H.264 YouTube projects worth the cost? I've never really put in a CPU upgrade on my MacBook. I'm running a MacBook Pro circa 2014, so I'm fairly close to the one that you're referring to. And I find that, first of all, that it's pretty fast. I don't know what you mean by fast, how much H.264 content that you need to spit out. I've been pretty happy with it, but I understand it does take a long time. And Mark, you can certainly chime in here. Is my understanding is that the H.264, all of the encoding does not take place on the CPU. It takes place primarily on the GPU. That's the graphics. So,
well, I think it actually does. I think it's the compositing that happens on the GPU. But like we do some, every year a big project where we use multiple Mac Pros because of the cores specifically for doing overnode encoding. And more cores helps with that.
Okay.
I think by a 2013 Mac Pro, I think they mean I hate to use the terminology, but the trash can Mac Pro. I didn't know you could upgrade the CPU on that machine. Maybe you can. It can speed things up. So time is money. If it's worth it to you I don't know what the difference would be, but that's the primary benefit of the CPU of the Mac Pro in general, honestly, is the encoding speed, rendering and encoding speed.
Okay.
Nothing else. The playback is going to be more the GPU.
Awesome. Well, yeah, in fact, we're at a client's house in LA, and she was working on a 17-core iMac, and wasn't she spitting out
iMac
YouTube
Pro.
videos? It was an iMac Pro with 17 cores, and she rendered something out, and I blinked, and it was a movie. I couldn't believe it. Anyway, so yeah, maybe it's worth it. Okay, so let's see. There was a question earlier about. The Audio Dabbler asked, so this is a plugin, not something built with motion graphics, correct? Depends what you mean by motion graphics. I mean, the pointers and the magnifiers, those are the graphics. They're motion insofar as that Mark built in animation into them. So they are, in fact, motion graphics. So I'm not sure.
I think they might have meant if their meant was built with motion. Was it built with a motion application? And the answer is part of it was built with motion, and it has some other components as well to allow the tracking to occur. But all the animation and the graphics were created with motion as templates for Final Cut. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right. So let's keep going through here. Hello from Germany, Aziz and Art from Bucharest. Welcome, guys. Put your questions in there. I'm about to answer a question that's going to take me into Final Cut Pro 10. I want to answer Ken Bennett's question on Multicam. But if you have your questions, now's the time. You have access to us. Put it in there, and we'll get to them. So Ken asked specifically, where was it? There. Is there a better way to edit multicam shows and keep the audio for switching back and forth between each camera audio source? Yes, I'll show you exactly my workflow, and you can see what I do. But Final Cut Pro will handle multiple audio sources, not just one, and as many audio sources as the clip contains. So obviously, if the camera has 4 channels of audio and you put that into a multicam clip, you have access to all of those channels. Now, I'm going to demonstrate what I'm talking about on a very simple multicam edit, but the concept, the process is exactly the same, Ken. So let me jump over to Final Cut for a moment. So I'm in Final Cut. I have a multicam edit. I'm not going to create one because I think I already have one. Yeah, this is a multicam edit. I've already created it, and I'm not going to cover that here because we already know how to do that. I'm going to select it. Press E to add the multiclam with the multiclam. There's my multiclam. And what I'm going to do is open the angle editor, Command-Shift-7. And you can see this is a simple 3-angle multicam edit, and I have the music. Okay, so the first thing you want to do, and by the way, when you put a clip in the timeline, notice as I move my pointer or my cursor over these various images in the angle viewer, if I click, I'll make a cut. And this is a very important thing to know if you're new to multicam. If you hold down the Option key, notice the razor blade turns into like a finger pointer, which means that you can switch the angles as opposed to cutting them, which is a really important thing. Now, the way you want to set this up is like I did. So notice, let me set this back here. Right now, well, by default, it sets for audio and video switching. So when you click these, it switches both audio and video. But as you pointed out, I maybe want to use the audio from another angle or perhaps another track altogether. Like this is a sync track that they sang to that we created in Logic. So I'm going to select I'm going to select that angle, which is the audio, and then I'm going to choose video only switching. Now that's that button at the top, which allows me to then select my video angles independent of the audio. Notice as I'm swapping out the angles, the audio in the timeline, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so you can see it. Notice the audio in the timeline does not change because I've got it fixed on that, essentially that production track. Now your question is like, well, I have multiple audio tracks. Like each one of these angles has their own audio. They have their own microphone. So let's assume for a minute that each of these angles maybe add 2 channels of audio or 3 channels of audio. It's pretty simple how to do this. The first thing you want to do is go down to the timeline and right-click on the audio and choose Expand Audio Components. This way you can see all your channels. It's not Expand Audio Components. So when we're looking at, we're in the component view, and I also have the inspector open, and you'll notice here that I have these other, each angle, like I'm on angle A right now, but each angle has multiple audio channels associated with it. So for example, if I wanted to cut to angle A, I'm going to just do a cut here. If I cut to angle, I think it is already an angle. No, yeah, if I cut to angle B, let's cut to angle B here. So I cut to angle B there, and then I cut to angle C there. But let's say right when you cut to angle B, you're using this audio, but maybe you want to use some of the audio from that camera's source. That's where the inspector comes in, the audio configuration, and say, all right, well, I know that camera's audio. Let's go ahead and add that camera's audio by checking the box. Notice the boxes are off by default. As soon as I click this, notice another audio component shows up in the timeline. And I'm not going to click, I don't think there's any more. Yeah, I'll click C. So now you consider these are the other audio sources in that clip. So you can add as many audio sources as the clip contains by doing it in the inspector. So,
Steve, can I mention one more thing?
Yeah.
Just to add on to that, if you put your playhead over any other clip, not that one, yeah. So let's say you always wanted to have not just the music track included, but also say that the audio from track A. If you go back to audio only switching,
that's right
at
here
the top,
yeah.
And then that one, and then you Option Command click on A. Just Option Command click, no, in the angle viewer, Option Command click on it. No, not over there, in the angle viewer. Yeah, Option Command click on that. It'll add it as a second audio source. So now every time you cut, you'll always get the audio from A and the audio from that music track.
Yeah, you know what? I completely forgot about that little shortcut. In fact, Mark covers that in his awesome multicam editing tutorial that we have on our site. Really glad that you amplified that, but you're right. I totally forgot. It's really funny about like these tools, like unless you're using them constantly, you forget. And Mark would know. Mark would know because, like he said earlier, he cuts this big talk show very much like a TED Talk, and so he's dealing with exactly this issue. So thank you, Mark, for pointing that out. So Ken, I don't know how we can answer it any clearer or better. That's how we do it. All right. Excellent. All right. So more questions here. What are the questions? All right. Ken is saying, I do have expand audio components engaged, but Final Cut Pro deletes the audio tracks. Final Cut doesn't delete audio tracks, Ken. It just doesn't. You're doing something, you're missing a step, you're turning something off in the inspector, but I can promise you audio tracks are not being deleted. Okay, let's go down to Aziz. I've moved from Mac to Windows. We need to talk, Aziz.
What?
Really? What? Really? Okay. All right. Let me. Thanks, Spankman. Thank you so much. So, see,
wow.
Thank you so much. I moved from Mac to Windows. I should say I hate the system, but I love the speed of Windows. Apart from that, I love being able to upgrade the hardware for a lot less cost. Well, there's a lot of people that like to tinker with computers. They like to take them apart. I put in new cards. I live around me in my sphere are a bunch of gamers, and even my son, I get a bunch of crap for like, why don't you use a PC? I get it, you can turbocharge them. It's like it's like a 60s, muscle car. You want to be able to turbocharge. I get it. Personally, you may be correct, but I'm not someone that likes to tinker with computers. I don't want to, change hard. I just want them to work, and I want them to work well. And really for me, and Mark, you can certainly add to this, I prefer the Mac operating system so much more than Windows operating system. So it's really about the OS more than anything. And, of course, Apple's coming out with a super fast computer. So, it's upgradable. So anyway, any comments on that?
I have a good friend who's built a Hackintosh, which is just, to me, it's intimidating to me, but he's taken me through the whole thing. It's gotten easier, and his, it's not a Mac, it's a PC, but it runs the Mac OS, and it's fully upgradable and everything. And he built it. It's as fast as the fastest iMac Pro out there right now, and he built it for a third the cost. So that was pretty impressive. It's beyond my skill set and desire to get into that. I'm like you, Steve. Like
desire.
Yeah, my time's worth something. Like I just, if you're into it, great. But it's like I just don't want to. I just want to do that. I just want to get to work. And the Macs are great for me, and they're fast, and that's what you need if you're going to use Final Cut Pro.
Okay, awesome. But thanks for pointing that out. Let's see. Hello, Emilio. Good to see you. Let's see here. Scott Gillies, are you guys seeing an increased demand for 360 VR video delivery from your clients? No. Here's a problem with VR in general. I mean, they're very specific use cases. I love VR. Don't get me wrong. I think it's great. The Insta360 camera is a fantastic camera. I think, again, the problem right now is people viewing stuff in headsets. It's a certain subset of the gaming world that loves it. My son loves it, but he likes the interactivity. Oculus just released the Quest, which has got better resolution than the Go, and it's got controllers. And I feel like where VR really excels is when you have the added ability to interact with the content. Doing just 360 VR is fairly passive. It's a passive experience. And, I've done it for a while, but after a certain point, I'm looking around. That's cool. All right. What's next? I like the VR experiences where there's a certain a game component to it. I still love it. I just, in general, for the masses, I think certainly people don't necessarily gravitate toward 360 content on YouTube. There's very popular YouTubers out there that, in fact, even Scott McKinnon, what's his name? Jamie McKinnon, if you watch his latest show on the Insta360 he loves it, but he doesn't love it for the VR aspect. He loves it for all of the amazing shots that you can get with a camera and then bring it into a standard, timeline and do with it. That's where I'm at right now with it. I love the camera, but I'm less interested in putting it, making it available as a immersive experience, at least now. So I don't know, Mark, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, the only thing I'd add to that is on the higher end, I do have several friends who are focused on 360 as a business, and they are very busy. So there's a lot. It's kind of a niche where there's folks who have focused on it as a business, and they're doing well. So there's a lot going on in this space, but it's very targeted to very specific markets and applications. So I think there's a lot going on in the low end where you're shooting 360, but you're delivering flat video with it. And then on the high end, there's some immersive experiences that are going on that's very busy. But I don't think in general, sort of the mid-range clients are coming saying, hey, I need a 360 video, along with my other stuff. We're not seeing that very much. I think It's more split across the low end and the high end.
All right, cool. A few comments on the PC to Mac thing. Let's see here. Thanks. Let's see. Escape Outdoors. Do you keep a show reel of favorite clips that you use often And if so, how do you manage it? Separate library. Good question. What I do is Mark and I use a lot of stock video, stock photos. We have hundreds of those clips, and we have a Synology server set up. Basically, it's an off-the-shelf server that you can buy on Amazon. It's a rack-mounted unit, and you can configure it with 4 drives, 8 drives, 16 drives, however you want. And we have all of our network. We have several Macs that are all connected to the Synology. And what we do is I have a single folder of all of my clips, and they're a single folder. They're broken down to like outdoor, people shots, city stuff, drones. Those are all folders. And then what I do is I create a library in Final Cut Pro 10, and and then when I bring them in as reference clips. So they stay where they're at. But I leave in place, and I have a very small library that points to where all this stuff is. So I still get all my keyword collections from the folders that are on the Synology, and then they're there. But that's essentially how we manage them. We use very small library files that are pointing to where those files exist on our Synology server. That's how I do it, or we do it.
Yeah, I actually need to do that because I have all my stock photos now and videos and stock audio all on a connected RAID. But I really need to put that all into libraries, leave in place, and keyword it so I can find the stuff easier, because I end up going through everything. But that's a good way to do it. And if you've got, so like Steve says, I think having a separate library of stuff you reference all the time, and then you can just drag between libraries when the stuff that you need when you're doing a new library.
Yeah. Good question. Really good question. All right. Hey, Craig just said he just did that motion tip you gave me. It looks like he put an emoticon where he's like, what?
Good. Well, yeah, let us know if that works okay for you. Hopefully that'll work. What kind of backup system are you guys using? That's kind of funny because I recently got a Promise RAID to consolidate. I've had just a stack of hard drives for the longest time. And every time I try to find something, I'm going to use Final Cut Pro. I got Final Cut Library Manager, tells me where everything is, even the offline drive. So it's great. But then I have to dig through and find those drives. So I finally got my act together and consolidated everything. It took like a week onto one drive, but that's not a backup, right? I mean, it's a RAID. So if one drive fails, you can still rebuild it, but it's not really a backup. So I'm backing that whole thing up to the cloud right now, which I'm not convinced is a great idea because it's blowing through my data plan, so it's costing me extra for a couple of months, because it will take a couple of months to back it all up. The first pass through, and then once it does, I'm going to throttle my data plan back down again. But I just felt like I should have everything in the cloud. I mean, I just should, and so I'll do a couple months. It'll cost me, $100 or a couple $100 or something. But then it's all off-site, and then drives will die, guaranteed they will die, and I have it all somewhere else. So that's my strategy is using a RAID locally and then backing up to the cloud. And I use Backblaze is the service I use. How about you, Steve?
Backblaze is one I would use, and if it's bandwidth, they have the service where they send you a drive and you just put your terabytes on it and ship it back to them. And then it's like cold storage, and they'll put it on their server so you don't have to use all your bandwidth. The only thing I recall talking to them at NAB was that it was pricey and to do that. So I don't know what their pricing structure is for that. But Google has, if you use Google Drive, we love Google Drive. They have something called cold storage where they could send you a drive. I haven't looked into it recently, but for me, that answers the question about like bandwidth. You got to upload all these huge files, and it takes over your system, and it eats through your monthly allotment. And I think it'd be better to do that, and so I'd look into that first, and then just have that stuff up there, and then you just pull down the clips when you need them. Not a big fan of LTO. LTO is big in enterprise. It's the what's it stand for? LTO. Anyway. There's so many acronyms. Longitudinal tape something, yeah. Basically, LTO has been the standard for enterprise backup. It's tape. So you put these little cassettes in a deck and you're backing everything up, and it's linear. So it's like, it's not online. It's like off, it's near, what they call nearline. It's close, you can still pull it back. It's really interesting. I was just reading an article where they've upped the size of the LTO tapes. I forget what size they're at now, but the problem is that there's only 2 manufacturers for LTO now. It's either like Sony and Samsung, or I can't think of another one, but they're in a legal battle right now for LTO. So these big cassettes aren't even available. You can't get them. So you're stuck with what I think it's 8 gigabytes or 8 terabytes. I think it's 8 terabytes. But yeah, they're in a legal battle, like who has the rights to the tape, this format. So anyway, all that to say, LTO is a solution, but it's very slow. You got to back it up to tape, and for us, the cloud works fine.
What about how we back up?
What's that?
What about how we back up?
Oh, how do we back up?
We back up off-site to
Right.
Synology.
All right. Now, what we do is, the other way we back up is we look at our Synology, and we look at the stuff that, hey, we haven't, like all of our old Mac breaks. Why does this stuff have to stay on the server? We'll take that and then back it up to a lower cost, a backup drive. And we'll just have that, in the closet. So every now and then, every few weeks, we'll just back up. No, we actually do like house cleaning every 6 months, and then we back up everything to that's like really old, and then delete it off the Synology. So that's another thing that you could do.
And just to address, Aziz had a follow-up question: is the cloud not too slow? And it's slow, but just to clarify, I'm not using the cloud to connect to assets, to download assets. I'm just trying to get everything up there once. And it takes months. I mean, I literally have, right now, I'm uploading 8 terabytes, and I just checked, I've got 2 terabytes to go, and it's been about a month and a half now. So it'll take a couple months, but I don't really care. I just want to get it all up there. And then for an ongoing basis, I may just do another batch later rather than keep going when I have, we're in the middle of a big new project with a lot of footage, and I don't think I want to throw it all up there as well right now. So it's a really good question. It's always a challenge to figure out what the good backup solution is. But just the one comment I make is RAID is great because if you're doing something like a RAID 5, because there's some redundancy built in, but it's not a backup strategy. It's just a safety. You do need to back up, and it's good to back up off-site, with earthquakes and fires and tornadoes and mudslides and what have you. It's
everything you experience in California.
Yeah, especially here in California. Well, everywhere. If you're not California, you got hurricanes or tornadoes to worry about. So it's all over the place. There's a
right. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Steve.
No, you were gonna. There's a question right in there.
I was just gonna say this green screen question.
Yeah.
From Alan Kelly. So Alan Kelly says, with green screen, if someone is wearing green, is there a technique for using a duplicated layer to access the alpha channel to key a clean image with a holy foreground? So, man, this is one of these fix it and post kind of things. I mean, whoever's shooting green screen, you don't have somebody wear green. It just causes a huge issue. So there are 2 cases. If what they're wearing is green, but it doesn't touch the edge of them, for instance, let's say they're wearing a shirt and there's a green logo in the middle of the shirt, but the rest of the shirt is not green. You can handle that with a holdout mat. So you add an additional mask on the inside of the subject. It's called a holdout mat, and you keyframe it to move along with the subject. And the reason it's called a holdout mat is because that is not being keyed. You basically duplicate the clip on top of itself, and you can is one way to do it. And then that holdout mat will composite together, and you'll be fine. If the green they're wearing goes to the edges, so let's say they're wearing a green shirt, the whole thing is green, I'm sorry, I don't know what you do in that case, unless it's a different shade of green, so you can get very narrow with your key to try to bring it back. But if they're wearing a green that's very similar to the green background,
It's kind of
reshoot.
It's called it's called rotoscoping, frame by frame.
Yeah, you could you could rotoscope frame by frame mask to rotoscope it out. You're exactly right, but boy oh boy, it'd take less time to reshoot depending on what it is.
Well, and the other thing too is there are other keyers out there. I mean, like Resolve has 2 good keyers, one in Fusion and one that are really, really good that might be able to salvage something like that. I'd have to play with it, but there's not, and Final Cut isn't got the only keyer. So it's one of those things where it's like, the client, we can't reshoot, and if we don't get this done, if I don't get this keyed, then I'm never going to work with this client again. Well, there are other keyers out there that might work a little bit better. Anyway, so Michael's asking, can you edit 4K off that Synology? Absolutely. As long as it's like ProRes, we're good. I would suggest if you have multiple stations connected to the Synology, you're probably gonna want a 10 gigabit E connection for your network. You're gonna laugh. We're using should I say this? We're using a 1 gigabit E on with 5 iMacs. We're doing all HD, and we never had any hiccups. We don't really do 4K. There's almost everything we do is for the web or for tutorials. And this idea that you have to shoot 4K, yeah, I get it. You can like punch in and you get those close-ups. That's a useful thing. But honestly, I'm not even a huge fan of that, because punching in. The nice thing about, and this is where we can agree to disagree, the nice thing about shooting a multicam with 2 cameras, you have 2 completely different angles, as opposed to just punching into what amounts to a larger view of the same angle. I know I kind of went off on a tangent there, but yeah, I would say if you're doing if you're doing 4K over Synology and it's just one person edit, you probably do it. I think like the Sony cameras, like the A7 series, it's like 4K is at 100 megabits per second, which is well under the headroom of the 1 gigabit E. So you should be able to do it.
Right. Awesome. We've got City of Lacey is saying, I'm working in a 2997p project and I'm trying to incorporate some 2398 footage. Can you talk about the different rate conform settings? Well, first of all, I would just drop them in. It's going to work. Final Cut will automatically conform your footage to play in the current frame rate, and it should just work. You may see some duplicating of frames to make that possible. But Final Cut is great because you can throw any resolution, any mix of resolutions and frame rates in the same project, and it'll do the best it can to play all that stuff. There's nothing you do to conform it.
Right. Yeah. Going from 24 to 30 is because it's the math doesn't exactly work out, but it does have to, like Mark said, it does need to add frames, and Final Cut will do that, and we've done that lots of times. And depending what you're doing it for, if you're doing YouTube videos, chances are no one will. If there's like maybe a judder or a little bit of frame weirdness, no one's going to notice it. Especially if it's YouTube. It depends again if it's broadcast or big screen where every frame counts. Then you might want to think about doing a standards conform. You could always bring it into Compressor and conform it using those tools in Compressor to the proper frame rate. There's a lot more tools in Compressor that allow you to get a really clean output. But other than that, I might say just let Final Cut do its thing. 9 times out of 10, you'll be really happy.
Yeah, it'll duplicate frames, because if you got 24 frames in a 30 frame per second project, it needs to play those 24 frames over 30 frames. And the only way to do that without having this timing change is to add 6 frames. Right. So it'll duplicate frames to get there. And it tries to do that in an intelligent way so it doesn't look bad. Right. I guess that's the easiest way to say that.
Video Workshop Volunteers is asking, is an eGPU like the Radeon 64 worth it on a terabyte 2 port for FCP 2? Thunderbolt 2, Thunderbolt 2 port, TB2, I like TB2. I don't know. I'd have to try it. I don't have any experience with an eGPU. I've been wanting to get the Blackmagic eGPU, but not necessarily for Final Cut, but for Resolve, for doing color grading. That's what I'm primarily interested in it for. But I don't have any data for you whether it's worth it or not. They're expensive, so that's a very good question. I know, they're definitely above $500. So don't know. Okay.
Yeah, I say it depends on where what's the problem for you now. I don't think it's going to help much with exporting times, that kind of thing. But if you're having significant playback performance, you might get better playback performance out of it.
Yeah. So that's what I was saying. Dean was saying he shoots 4K and he punches in. A lot of people do that. I'm not saying it's a wrong thing. Some people like it. I just prefer two camera angles, so it's a preference thing. So what you're saying is for my YouTube tutorials, I should be doing 1080p instead of 4K. No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that we choose to do 1080, and here's why. Everybody that's going to be viewing our tutorials are going to be viewing it on a phone, and we do web-based tutorials. I don't see any benefits to doing a screen capture at 4K unless you're going to maybe play it on a big screen, maybe. But we found just our YouTube metrics, and that's why metrics are so important. We know who's watching what. Like most people are watching on their phones or they're watching it on their computers. And there's another reason why we do 1080. The footprint, the Synology, the storage requirements for 4K versus 1080, that's a huge delta. And I don't want to take up a bunch of space on my drive with 4K when it's unnecessary. So, I'm shooting with a C100. This shoots 1080, and it's perfectly fine for what we do. So I never really bought into the 4K hype, and I know there's reasons to use it. I'm not saying there isn't. I'm just saying for us, for storage and what we do, 1080 is perfectly fine. Of course, now all the camera manufacturers are telling you that you need to have 8K. That's the next. You've got to have 8K. If you don't have 8K, you're going to be left behind. That's the messaging now. So I'm just not buying into it. There's just tons of 1080 material. Certainly a lot of 4K monitors out there. That's a whole other thing, but that's why we shoot in 1080 and edit in 1080. Okay. Okay. Oh yeah. So thanks go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was saying that Scott was saying that the Hawaii keyer is well worth the money. So there's another third-party keyer that was mentioned. Hawaii keyer. I think it's a plugin. You can get it on FX Factory. Okay, awesome.
Yeah, I've heard good things about that.
So P Weeks is asking, hey guys, can you send captions over to Compressor? The answer is absolutely.
Sure can.
Yep, absolutely. And you can actually create them in Compressor if I'm not mistaken. I don't know why you would, but
yeah, I'm just doing that right now. I just to demo it. I just added a caption in Final Cut, sent it to Compressor, and it comes through, and you can modify it in Compressor and everything. So absolutely, very easy.
All right. Cool. Did you want to show that or no?
Sure. Let me screen share, and I'll just do it from scratch here. Let's see. Let me screen share, start sharing, Final Cut, Command Option F. So I'm just going to add, this keyboard shortcut is Option C. You can, of course, import captions, SRT file, but I'm just going to say, hello, I'm a caption. All right, so I've got a caption in this project as an example, and then I'll go to the File menu and choose Send to Compressor. And here we are in Compressor, and actually sent it a minute ago, so I see I've already got a job set up there, but let's say I'll just add a preset onto that job there, and we need to wait for a minute for it to load the project. But you can see right here, Captions English, it shows it, and I can scrub forward to it now that it's loaded. There it is. Hello, I'm a caption. I can select the captions here, and you've got full access to all the formatting and everything right in Compressor. So definitely, I've never needed to do that, but there you go.
All right.
Change the language, what have you.
All right, cool.
All right.
So, so a couple things. Dan made a clarification. You can't actually use an eGPU over Thunderbolt 2 anymore. Apple removed that feature. So thanks for that clarification. Big Bod really should be stopped watching this on my 92-inch screen projecting. 92-inch. Oh, wow. That's pretty awesome. Okay. Okay, so Tom and DeAngelis, I'm already using the shape mask and keyframing that mask to separate a talking head. Speaker's head is moving around a lot. Is there any way to handle that movement? Speaker's head's moving around a lot. So he's already using the mask like you referred to before, on the main port of. I mean, one way would be, I mean, there's no tracking. You got to do it manually. You got to keyframe it. I don't know any other.
You could do it in motion. You could go to motion, because in motion you've got all the you've got all the shape tools, but you also have Bezier shapes. It could be a little easier to use a Bezier shape instead of a B-spline instead of a Bezier path.
That's a good
you
point.
can add tracking too. So you could track that shape in motion.
You could what?
Try the resolve track.
And then you can also, we were saying how you could, if it's a really tough clip, you can bring it into Resolve and use the Resolve tracker. It's very, very, very good. And
good.
then, create your key in there. So, all right. We're almost to the top of the hour.
Yeah.
I wanted to cut. Yeah, I know it's gone fast.
I know you wanted to mention a couple things, Steve.
Yeah, I did want to mention a couple things. First of all, we've been doing these short subject tutorials, and I really wanted to show you that we get a lot of questions like working with audio effects in Final Cut Pro, like how do you work with compressors, limiters, EQs. We have a great short subject webinar coming up. I believe it's July 17th. It's $20. $20. And you can take that. You could sign up right here. Our awesome editor, DP, Travis, is going to be doing that one. And he delivered a great tutorial a few weeks ago on live streaming. If those of you want to know how we do our live streams, this is still on sale for $20. It's going to go back up like at the end of the week. So if you want to know how we set up our live streams, how we do them, how we edit them, how we set it all up, you definitely want to check this out. Our motion graphics toolkit, and then Mark's did one on the cut page in Resolve 16, and I did one on mixing strategy. These are all like really great short subject tutorial. You can get a cup of coffee and sit down and learn some really great things. A couple things. There's a creative summit that's coming Final Cut Pro specific in Cupertino. The dates were announced. This is where all the Final Cut Pro users get together from all over the world, and they meet in Cupertino near Apple, and it's November 8th to the 10th. I don't think any they may have pricing, I don't know. But anyway, oh look, there you are, Mark. They got you as a feature speaker. So
I haven't even been invited yet. So
you haven't been invited. That's so full. Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
I guess you're going.
I guess you're going. You're going.
I guess
all right, so you want to check
Steve and I have been to every single one of them. It's a great event.
Yeah, it's really fun. And then lastly, I want to go over our dates for RippleLIVE that are coming up. So for, July has been very challenging because we've got a lot of things in July. Mark's teaching a filmmaking camp for kids. He's traveling. So look, here's the next one, June 27th. That's 2 weeks. We're going to still keep with our 2 week schedule, but we're going to bump it to Friday for July 12th, Friday, July 12th and July 26th. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing one to almost August, and that's just completely unacceptable. So if you want to just make note of the fact that in July, we'll be doing 2 Fridays instead of our usual Thursdays. So wanted to point that out. Okay.
I want to just mention, somebody said they're traveling and they want to attend the webinar, and they can't, and they're saying I hope it'll be for sale afterwards. Definitely, just like you saw all the other webinars.
Right. So what you do is you sign up for the webinar. It's $20, and that's really great because it goes up to $30 after the webinar. So you sign up for it, and even if you don't make it, the webinar will be added to your library right after, within a few days after the webinar, and so you'll be able to see everything that Travis to get your questions answered live.
But wait, but he can get it for $20 instead of $30.
Yeah,
signing up for it?
Everybody can sign up for $20 now and get the webinar for $20.
Nice.
Yeah, and it'll have chapter markers. It'll have everything, and it's going to be a great webinar. It's going to cover all the stuff to make your audio sound better. All right. So if you live in the United States, and if you celebrate the July 4th holiday, we wish you a really great, safe holiday next week, and thank you for supporting RippleLIVE. Thank you for purchasing our plugins, our tutorials. We really, really appreciate it. If you have something specific that you are struggling with our tutorial plugin, you could use support@rippletraining.com. And of course, you can continue to post comments on our YouTube channel, and we monitor our YouTube channel frequently. So with that, I wanted to thank you so much again, and we will see you next time in RippleLIVE episode 15.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
See you.